Hey everyone, welcome back to the GEB America Podcast. Today I'm your host, David Groves. Glad you could be here with us. Remember, every Tuesday we drop a new episode, and today is like every Tuesday. We're excited to have a very special guest with us today. But before I introduce him, I want to thank the folks at Our True God for their support of GEB and the podcast. Be sure you go over to their website and check out all the great content they have there, where you can wear your faith on your sleeve, literally, or on your head. Kind of depends on that. Well, without further ado, I want to welcome in Dr. Carl Barnes. He's an author. He is a veteran of the Navy. He is an amazing speaker, and we have a lot of, I think, mutual friends. And he is here today to talk about this concept of being a resilient leader. So welcome in. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the speakers and not necessarily those of GEB America, Oral Roberts University, or their employees. This program is not intended to offer investment, financial, medical, legal, or any other advice. Viewers should consult a subject matter professional regarding any such matters.
Thank you, Dave, for having me. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be a part of this, and I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, the honor is ours because we know you're busy. From what I understand, writing book number 9. So
Yes.
that's very cool.
Yes, yeah, book number 9 is being worked on as we speak. Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about how you kind of came to this point of knowing that you had this call or this gift to work with growing and developing leaders, and how best to bring people to a place of really pulling themselves up by their bootstraps and being resilient. How did you? First of all, where'd you grow up? How did you end up going into the Navy? Was that something that you wanted to do, or something that, I don't know, your mom told you to do? I'm just curious.
Well, that's a good question, Dave. As a matter of fact, I grew up on the dirt roads of West North Carolina. I mean, when I said dirt road, it was literally a dirt road in North Carolina. And I knew that growing up, all I wanted to do was travel, see the world, and get an education, not knowing it was going to be via the United States Navy, because my father was very much opposed to the military. I'm a PK. My father's a pastor, so he did everything but encourage the military. But something, a part of me just said I wanted more out of life. As Les Barne said, I was hungry beyond the dirt road. I did a lot of reading. I was traveling. I grew up in church. Surrounded by. I work with senior citizens, so I'm this little kid in an adult choir. So I was exposed to leadership at a young age, being in the church, raised in the church, teaching Sunday school, vacation Bible school. So I was always in that environment. And I found a picture the other day of me in my enlisted uniform teaching students. The very school the Navy said I didn't qualify to go in, another story if we get there, to end up teaching those students, and also end up becoming an instructor at Navy chaplain school, because they said that I had a background in education. I was an instructor. I was a master training specialist in the Navy. So I'm putting all this together. Okay, God, how's this coming together? Okay, I'm raised in the church. I got all this background in teaching. So all of it came together. I believe it was ordained from God that leadership was at the focal point of my strategic writing about leadership and also about resilience. So all these things I found out that I was doing already, but not into practice, with the books and all the accolades and all those things coming with my duty station. But it came together full circle, and that's where we end up in the leadership and resilient realm.
It's amazing. We've been really blessed to have several people on that have served in the military. We thank you for your service. Obviously, that's amazing, especially 35 years in the Navy. One of the gentlemen we had on several months ago was a fellow by the name of Ben Peterson. Ben came out of kind of the special forces of the Army, Rangers, and that sort of thing. And he talked a lot about the discipline that the military brings.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that, and for somebody that didn't serve, is that where you really started to hone your skill set as a leader, or was it something that you felt like was already kind of instilled in you and you just maybe formed some greater discipline that kind of helped you along your path and got you thinking that direction?
Good question, David. I would say that I was already disciplined before I went in. I mean, I was already saying yes, ma'am, and sir before I went in, because I was raised a very respectable child in church. I would say that the military allowed me to hone in my leadership acumen as I went through the ranks, coming from enlisted all the way to senior officer, retired as an '05, a commander, lieutenant colonel, other branches. So all those avenues and steps allowed me to gain much more knowledge, working with admirals and generals. I got to serve the Marine Corps as well as Coast Guard. So all of those things, being their chaplain, learned me things about myself, taught me things about myself in leadership, because I was always instructing. Even as an enlisted, I was an instructor, doing this and that. So all those things coming to commander. And so I found out the church was, I'll say, the root of it that started it, but it flourished as I began to stay in the Navy longer, because I was discharged at least 3 times. They said, how do you do that? I got out and came back in because I enjoy the discipline, but I also enjoy that they invest so much in training. I got to go to a lot of schools. The Navy paid for 4 of my 5 degrees. So all those things came together because I was hungry for education and I was a lifelong learner. So all those things culminated in terms of my acumen and picking up a lot of leadership skills.
It's amazing. So you've coined the phrase or the topic in your niche of being a resilient leader.
Yes.
What would you say in your experience in the last several years and working with up and coming leaders, or maybe even just established leaders that are feeling stuck or lack of clarity and all that? What are some of the maybe the points of where they've gotten maybe a little bit slowed down or gunked up in the works? What are the things that you've seen, and then what are the things that you feel like you've really been able to help people to kind of see and maybe have a mindset shift?
Well, I'm a very transparent person when I go speak on the stage. As a matter of fact, a prime example, last year I went to Baltimore and I spoke at this, it was a refueling on fire. And so before I went on the stage, I had a whole scripted out event I was talking about. And I went in the bathroom. It's like, oh my God, I was crying. It's like, okay, God, I can't do this. So I went out and changed my whole topic. I started talking about leadership in terms of being transparent. I went on and talked about my mental health status, the fact that I have PTSD, I'm in counseling. And I told all these pastors leaders in front, I said, medicine, prayer, and therapy works because I'm one that can do that. And you can see the eyes of people like, oh my God, are you serious? I said, yes, because I found out that I had this facade, this mask on. So I went in and had this sheet over my head. It supposed to be the mask. And I pulled it off and said, how many of you are living behind the mask? I said, and the more I did that, the comfort I forgot, because it made me feel that I was coming from the heart instead of up here, all these scripted out. I just say, look, let's just talk about life. As a leader, I've worked with all types of leaders, 4-star, 3 stars, E1 people. And I learned a little bit from each one of them. And the thing about being a Navy chaplain is that I had full confidentiality, meaning that no one knew anything about them but me. They would talk to me about things that they were struggling with. Yes, we're walking out there, the troops say a big, person is, hey, we're running things, we got the command here. But on the outside, behind closed doors, they were human. And most of the time they share with me the things that you wouldn't see that because, we have to put in this big, strong image. I learned from that, but I also learned how to navigate because people always say, oh, you're too humble. My admiral with the Coast Guard, who ended up being a 4-star later on, he said, you know what? He said, your humility, they said now is a superpower, but your humility is a strength. And I'm reading this book called, what is it? It's called Humility, something humility. Anyway, I have it downstairs, but it talks about being humble as a leader. And those leaders that the person researched through the years, they had this special quality of humility, but they know how to use it in the right way. They didn't, bash people down and all that, but they found out that me as a leader, some things I didn't know. I didn't mind asking for help. And on my ship, every place I was an department head, things I didn't know. So what I did, I learned to ask them because we learn from each other. So those that knew more, I said, can you teach me how to do this? What is about this? So I learned that by me learning from them, they learned from me because I said it's up and down. We learn from, one another. Like millennials, like my nieces and nephews are young. They know things I don't know. I have things that they don't know. So I found out it's reciprocal in terms of the wise head, the young head, whatever you want to say, the millennial. We can learn from each other. So I say as a leader, if you maintain the humility factor and know that as the world is evolving, technology is changing, it's going at the speed of lightning. And some things I can't grasp, some things I can, but there's always somebody a little smarter than I.
Yeah, it's true. And man, yeah, but having that humility to say, you know what, I don't know everything, but I'm willing to learn. Many years ago, I won't name names. I worked with a leader that another very famous leader was coming to speak, and I asked him, "Are you going to come to the event?" And he's like, "No, I know what he's all about. I've learned everything I can about that." And I remember it was like, oh man, like I couldn't believe he said it. It was like I'm pretty sure we always can learn something,
Yes.
in those situations.
Yes.
So something I'm curious about is, so let's talk about, you've authored 8 books to this point.
Yes.
Have you always kind of stayed on this trajectory with resiliency and that, or is, I'm curious to see if I'm always curious of like the development of leaders over time, what kind of happens. And I'll kind of explain here in a minute while I'm
Okay.
asking you that.
Yes. So basically, I would say that I was born resilient. That's one of the book. That was book number 7. Born Resilient, mini memoir, finding courage and hope in adversity. I'll tell people I was born resilient in the womb of my mother, and I'm very transparent about this. I talk about it, but I was born to a teenage mother that almost aborted me. And
Oh,
my
wow.
mother said, the voice of God said, don't do that. And so,
Mm,
what the scriptures say, what? I knew you in your mother's womb. And I'm beginning to think about this, like, what? In my mother's womb, God saw purpose in me. And I
yeah.
believe that purpose was birthed in resilience because I could talk from experience because my mother to this day, she's 80 years old, woman of God, woman of strong faith. But I'm saying that she heard the voice of God way back then as a teenage mother that said, don't do this. Don't do this. My great grandmother
Mm,
was an avid woman of faith, prayer warrior, and all that. But I believe that I was birthed in my mother's womb with a purpose, and that purpose became resilient. And so, all through my life, as I chronicle and read things about my pictures and the way I was raised and get into the military, they said I didn't qualify, getting commissioned, and then turned out for at least 3 or 4 commissioning programs. They said I didn't know what was resilient was, but what it was a bounce back. You know how
hmm
I had this toy clown with a child. You hit it,
Yeah.
you kept bouncing back up. I said, that's what resilient is. How do we bounce back from the adversities of life? And so I tell leaders sometimes, we have on this big facade, but I found out that my resilience is my superpower. My humility is my superpower because people say, you're just so humble. Yeah, I'm doctor, I was commander, I'm chaplain, padre. I remember this the other day, but at the end of the day, when I took my uniform off, I realized my name is Carl Barnes. The accolades and the titles open doors for you. That was great. But at the end of the day, I said, you know what? I'm Carl. How are you doing? And I found out I'm very comfortable with that. I've been around people like, no, call me doctor, call me that. I have an earned doctor too. Yes. Okay. That doesn't
Call me
impress
by my
me.
first name.
Yeah. I got a PhD and all that stuff. But that doesn't impress me. People want you to touch them here instead of here. Sometimes I think that
Yeah.
if we just come down, they say ego sometimes edging God out. I said, God, please keep me humble at your feet because right now people want people that are transparent and I'm becoming
Yes.
vulnerable sharing that. And the more I do that, the more people want to gravitate and hear my story. But it came
hmm
with a price. On my journey, it came with a severe price. I'm still paying for it. But would I do it again? I would do it again because I learned so much as a young enlisted. I came in at the very lowest of the lowest in the Navy. People laughed at me and retired as a senior officer, but it came with a cost and it came with resilience. And so I learned so much and gained so much. I say when the system told me no, God said yes. So my story is used as a testimony, David.
That's awesome. So if you're somebody that's listening and you're like, wow, that's amazing. I wish I could be so resilient. I just don't have, the natural skill set or ability, what would you say to me, the person that is feeling like maybe they don't have the bounce back of that clown toy, they just feel like, I've taken too many punches. What would you say to them, from a standpoint of, when they say, I can't really emulate that, what he's saying, I'd like to, but I don't really even know where to start.
I like that. Very good questions. I heard that you're saying the negative, you love the can't. So my mother's a person of faith. She's gone through a lot of surgery, and she's used a lot of those negative words. I said, Mama, please, you got to change what you say. Life and death is in the power of the tongue. I believe you can speak things out because you know what? Okay, I don't have enough money. Okay, I'm in transition. I don't feel good. Okay, great. But my thing is the humility factor. Surround yourself with the right people with the right mindset. I always talk about mindset because I found out you are the 5 people you associate with, that's who you are. I always say, people, take out your phone. I went somewhere and I spoke. I said, people, take out your phone. Look at the last 5 people that you talked to in the last 24 hours. Were they adding to your life or were they
Mhm.
subtracting? People say, oh my God, it's like, that would tell me what kind of person you are. Are those people
Yep.
at the level you want to be at? Or are they people that, they just drama after drama after drama? Are they entrepreneurs? Are they pastors? Are they mentors? Are they consultants? People that you go to because I don't have the answers, but the last 5 people in your phone would tell me a lot about you. And mine would tell you that I'm talking to mentors, coaches, and those people in my circle or want to be in their circle that I want to learn more because I'm always hungry. I said I'm a lifelong learner. And so I would say start with who are you surrounding yourself with? And that's the
Mm,
case. Look at your
that's good.
mindset. It starts up here. It's all about the mind. You know what? What's in your mind? Because what's in here eventually is going to come out. And so by me
That's
growing
right.
up, David, I was around older people like, what is this? I was around senior citizen, people that were wise. And like, I'm a young child. Why am I there? Because at that time, that's all there was in a church in DC. So I gravitated just by being at their feet and listening to them, listening to their
Hmm.
stories, because they could teach me something, not knowing that those things they taught me is still within me today. Even though it was much older, they've gone on to glory, but I'm glad that I surrounded myself with a different group of people. You know, I could have been outside playing with other children, but I decided to, like my great grandmother before she passed, listen to her stories. I
Hmm.
recorded her stories because she knew something. She went through something that I've never gone through before. How did she survive? How did she
Yeah.
overcome those things those days? And so to me, I feel like I have all of that within me in that DNA that tell me, you know what? If she did and got through that, and I'm younger than much younger, I can get through the same thing. But it came from listening to people with wisdom. The five people growing up, my great grandmother, my grandmother, she died at 97. Great grandmother was 98. So these women had wisdom. They was in that church. They read Bibles, and I was always just so amazed at their life they lived because they always touched people's heart. My great grandmother was a piano player in the church, and everybody knew this little bitty 4-foot woman be around with her Bible in her hand, but she was a woman that touched the city. At her funeral, the mayor came out because they knew this short little woman always had her Bible in her hand. She had an
Yeah.
infectious smile about her, but they knew that she was a humble woman.
The life experience, the American experience that they had, is, such an amazing story, the good and the bad. I
Yes.
remember thinking of my grandfather, he was a child of the Depression era.
Mm,
My great grandfather, I did know, he died in the mid 80s, but he only had a fourth grade education.
mhm,
They were farmers. They were poor farmers and they had like nine
mhm.
kids. And I would ask my grandpa, what was it like when you were a kid? And it was kind of a silly question to him. He's like, "What do you mean what it was like?" Well, I'm like, "What'd you do for fun?" "Well, we'd
Yeah.
go to the swimming hole." I'm like, "Really?" It's like you'd ask, and it's those stories. It's
And that's
fascinating.
great. You know what, David? As a matter of fact, this past weekend, every Labor Day weekend is the family reunion weekend. My father's side of the family, they get together every year and it's like this big family. And I thought about the dirt road, and we were telling stories how growing up on the dirt road, we had fun and shit. We played, we went in the field, we played baseball, we had Easter egg hunts. Everybody lived down this dirt road. We ate at one another's home, but it was a family. These were first and second cousins. We were like sister and brother, but we did things.
Hmm.
We played. I was a choir director. I was a bus driver when we allowed students to ride the bus, the 10th, 11th grade. 90% of those students were my cousins. I took those same cousins to my great grandmother's house, and they were my choir. We was having choir rehearsal because that's how we grew up. We all stuck together, and they knew that, hey, I was the one that was going to go to choir rehearsal, sing in the choir, and we became a choir because we lived on the dirt road. We played together, and we had fun. We were active. Even though we had these older aunts and uncles that fed us, but
Hmm.
we always took care of each other. We learned so much from them. And to this day, the family reunion still goes on. And the legacy of my grandfather that, Sidney Barnes, they have this big old picture with his pipe in his mouth. And it's like, he knew it, but they said, this is his legacy to continue that the families come together, share together, love each other, eat and enjoy life because we know that
Yeah.
one day we're not going to be here. So the legacy continues. That's the big word, legacy.
Your father was a preacher. You talk about
Yes.
was it your great grandfather Sidney? Was there any other ministers in the family? Like what was the
Oh,
heritage of the family? Were they
my
like
father
I
was
come
the
from like
first
farmers and
minister. My father was the first generational minister in the family. Now there are several out there. He have nephews, but my father was the first one. So he was called the preacher of the family when he came because we lived in
yeah.
D.C. before he migrated, left his federal government job years ago to come and start a little country church in North Carolina. I call it, I grew up in storefront churches. I've spoken mega churches, big churches, but I started from very small beginnings. And those beginnings I knew that shaped me because that's all my father knew. He wasn't always in church, but that's another story. He was in a construction accident way in DC where before he went down this hole, he said, God have mercy on me. My father's going on 84 years old this year. And he reminisced because he said, look, I've lived past 70. He didn't think he would live past 25. And those
Mm.
things, I watched him. This man prays so much, David. I mean, his knees would be scarred up. Even though he can't get on his knees, I said, Daddy, you have prayed so much. I mean, he would pray in the house. The whole house would know that. We didn't do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
We prayed. My mother had 12 o'clock prayer every day. She walked from the school, went to the church at 12 o'clock. My mother knew that this is 12 o'clock prayer. And my grandmother passed away. This woman said, you know what? Don't ever disturb Mother Minnie, my grandmother, because they knew at 12 o'clock, don't knock on her door. This is prayer time. And she was serious about a prayer time. So that's the kind of DNA I came from, where we
Yeah.
didn't have a lot, but they instilled faith in us. If anything, that was the gift they gave us. Not a lot of money, but how to trust in God, because we went through bad times. We lived in the project. I remember getting, food, free food and all that. But we thought we were rich. We didn't know anything. But the thing about it, they kept in church. My mother used to walk down this hill in DC in the projects, catching the bus to go to church. We would sit on the doorsteps of the church before the church opened when my father first got saved. That's how dedicated we were. I didn't know anything about church. 24/7 Sunday school. That's like, is there anything in life besides church? So David, that's how I was raised.
Yeah.
Everything was church, 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 church. Like, wow. I feel like I was on a Quaker farm because that's all we knew. And as I got older, those values are still with me to the day because they were dedicated to the church, and that's what they gave to the children.
It's amazing. Well, I love hearing the stories. I think that, it's so easy to kind of get caught up with the business of life and forget,
Yes. Yeah.
forget where you came from, forget those things, those small little things. I
Yeah.
want to ask you this because I'm always cognizant of the people that are listening, right? They're like,
Yes.
they may be hearing us and going, okay, I want to work on this. I want to be more resilient. And I know that our listeners are probably sick of hearing me say this quote, but I'm going to say it
Yes.
anyway because you hit on it. Is that the great John Maxwell said in all
Oh,
his
yeah.
studies of successful leaders, there's only one thing that separates the successful ones from the unsuccessful ones, and that is mindset.
Yes.
So how do you change your mindset and have a resilient attitude if you feel like you've had bad self-talk, you've been you've dealt with imposter syndrome. Some people say, well, I just feel like I'm too far down the negative
Mhm.
road. What do I do? So what would you say to them?
You know what? I like that because you said mindset. And so my thing is a mindset, again, who are you surrounding yourself with? I mean, it's better said than done, but my thing is, I'm thinking about as I talk to leaders and I said the mindset, because you know what? We are what we think every day. Even in life, what are we thinking about? What we read. So growing up, I didn't have a lot of mentors. I did a lot of reading, David. I mean, now I have a library of books. I'm surrounded by books. I believe you can read your way to the next level. But I always
Mm-hmm.
read things that would encourage me because I never had a big brother. I'm a big brother to a lot of people, but who is that big brother to me? It was books. It was listening to audiobooks. Way before Maxwell was doing things, I went to get certified from years ago, and I would go to conferences. I would invest and go to conferences to listen to Maxwell, other people travel because I wanted something ahead, and Maxwell always impressed me. I went to just about so many of his before I found out other people, but I was in the room with people that were inspired. And I remember he would always have his little prayer service. He said, now, this is what I'm going to do. Y'all have to do this, but it would be full and packed with all those business leaders because he said, this is who I am. So he never divided that up, but he said, I got to have my devotional service, in the middle of my conference, and people came from everywhere. And so I found out just being transparent. And he impressed me because even at the marketplace and in the pulpit in ministry, he was still able to combine that. And you just never know what people are going through.
Yeah.
Okay, how does he do this? Mindset, he had a very strong spiritual upbringing. His faith, I believe faith was the high point of my life too. Even in the military, I found out that my faith was strong because, as they say, that ship behind me, turbulence, I talk about turbulence a lot. Back and forth on the ship. And I said, my God, how we survive that? At times I thought we were going to capsize. And I was a master helmsman, David. That means that in my young enlisted days, when we went through strictly maneuvering, I was the person that was driving the ship, going
Oh,
back and
wow.
forth on those frigates because I knew how to navigate the ship through storms. And I equate that with life. We all face storms, but are you anchored? Where's your anchor? Is it in the word? Is it in a mentor? Is it someone you trust? Because there were times I didn't have nobody to call David. Who would I call in the morning? I knew that my parents, okay, I got to rely on the person that I trust, God. And so that helped me by having a strong faith because there were times I was in the wilderness, feeling all alone. And here I am, a Navy chaplain. It's like everybody's coming to me for help. It's like, well, who do I go to? And I mean,
Mm.
to this day, I'm the person that have confidentiality. I mean, I've heard Christ that dealt with suicide, everything you can think of. They came to me because they trusted me because I had 100% confidentiality. They could talk to me about anything. I would not judge them. And my door would be like, why is everybody coming to him? Because I had compassion. I'll say this one
Yeah.
thing short. Somebody said that I was a assignment officer. That means that I signed chaplains to their various job as a detailer. And somebody said that he's just too pastoral. So I found out that everybody that have these uniforms and say they're chaplains or whatever it is, I had a calling. Being a chaplain is a Navy calling, a pastor. And I knew I did it because you get burned out after a while because I care so much about God's people in all branches of the service with all pay grades. But by me caring so much, I still get emails, texts, and written reports today. It's like, you touched my life. I remember you said something, and I'm seeing it now in my life as I'm a chaplain, what I went through, because I said, what did I say? I don't remember that. They remember those little nuggets that I planted to them in the schoolhouse they took out in the field, how to be yourself, your authentic self as a chaplain, because I'm a worship leader. I love to sing. Everywhere I've been stationed, I would sing. It's like, wow, because that was a part of me. So I said, take your beliefs to the field, to the combat field, and do just that. Be yourself. Don't be anybody but yourself. And you watch them, because they say they're no atheists in the foxhole. They're not. Because when people have storms and battles, guess what? They want a strong anchor. So that meant that I had to really anchor down and have a good prayer life, surround myself with good people to pray for me when I couldn't pray for myself. It's like, okay, God, give me strength. Case in point, David, my first ship as a chaplain, I'm out there doing ministry, and we had man down. We had Marines on board the ship in the middle of the ocean. And what happened, they said man down. I ran from the pilot house to the flight deck. A Marine was working on the Humvee, and the thing fell on him and crushed him. I
Mm.
ran out there, everything roped off, the chaplain, I'm on the scene, and I'm looking at this like, oh my God, the books didn't teach me this. What was I going to do with this? So a peace came about me. I got together, me and the priest, we came together. We had to, we were contaminated because I saw this, and we had to get the ship ready to continue to deploy. We pulled in the port before the sprint team came out. These are the people that fly from the hospitals. We'd already done the work, debriefing, talking to everyone else. I'm a Lieutenant JG at O2. I said, there are certain things the books is not going to teach you. It came from life experience, and I believe my strong faith helped me to get myself together. Okay, we got to get the ship together, because the SEAL, we got to get the ship on the way, and people have got to be focused. So I had to get people focused. We had a memorial service to bring closure, but we got underway. It was not easy, but there are some things that the books couldn't even teach me, that God had the resilience, I believe, came out and said, hey, this is what we're going to do. I had to have a strong faith. I had to stay focused, because the ship and the CO is relying on me to bring everybody together so we can get back
Mm.
out to sea and do the mission. And so sometimes we look for things, and it's not always in the book. Something comes, and I'm learning now to enjoy my meditation hour and quietness, solitude, because sometimes when you're quiet, with all the noise and chatter out there, you got to cut it out. And so even in my life now, I'm learning to be still. And you know about that verse, be still and be quiet, because some things God, they said, do a download with you. Like, I never thought about that. A lot of my topics for my books come the same way. It's a download in my spirit, because
Yeah.
I'm in communion and I'm learning to be quiet, because, I found I just had ADHD not too long ago. I was like, are you serious? What is this? But I'm finding out it's okay to be still and to be quiet, and let God
Hmm.
download in your spirit as a leader to listen to his voice, because everybody's talking out there. Some talking, okay, how do I close it out and hear the divine word that God has a word specifically for me and for leaders that need to listen and have a word from the Lord? I know that was a lot, but I just felt overwhelmed
That's
to
so
talk
good.
about it.
That you know, be still and know, right? Be still and know that I'm God. It's not be still and you know, and then okay, tell me what else you need, or be
Exactly.
still and I'll tell you exactly what to do. And he doesn't always do that. It's just be in the knowing moment that you know that okay, he knows more than me. I got to trust him, even though, like you said, you're on literally a ship in the middle of a storm.
Yes.
Talk
Yes.
about your so your most recent book is Resilient Leader.
Yes.
Um, Tell us a little bit about what, without giving too much away, because we would love for people to get your book. But tell us a little bit about what how you approach that and how to be a resilient leader.
Right. Well, this book came from because I was told that of all the books I have, there was only one missing in that repertoire, and that was a leadership book. So I worked diligently with this company to put it all together. And I started thinking about the things that as a leader myself go through. What are some of those topics? For example, I'm looking at now, I start with the foundation. Then I talk about, okay, how to navigate uncertainties. Sound like things I've gone through, the storms. Also, the power of emotional challenge, EI, emotional intelligence. Sometimes we don't know where we are. And I'm a Myers-Briggs trained person. I did Myers-Briggs. I did all those, the DISC, I did all of those because I had to do those for my retreats in the Navy. But also building resilience through failure. That's when the titles, because we realize that, you know what, even in my own personal life, I didn't succeed at everything that I step out to do. Case in point, I mentioned that I applied for at least 4 commissioning programs. They all said no. Boost, Seaman Admiral, OCS. I didn't even make chief because what I found out is that I was not a test taker. So I'm very transparent about that. That's what I said when the system said no to me, God said yes as a testimony. I didn't even qualify to go in the United States Navy as an enlisted person. It took me 3 tries. They said, you failed. Carl, you failed. I got on some recording. But what happened, that test determined whether I was going to go to technical school or not to go in the Navy. And I could not pass the test. I was like, what is going on? Long story short, I was able to get into the Navy. They had what's called an apprenticeship program. I said, just let me get in the door. I got in. At the boot camp, I went to this, learn how to tie knots and clean the ship. Okay, apprenticeship training. Went to my first duty station, doing all the dirty work, the low stuff, because I didn't go to A school. Long story short, David, I ended up going to the very A school after being a strike on my ship in communication that the Navy said I didn't qualify for. Sometimes, you think I'm not qualified, but it's a testimony because it said that I allowed myself to be humiliated, sort of. Clean the ship, people talking about you, dirt bag and all this, to rise through the ranks. But I know what it felt like as I got to the ranks, as I was a person knowing what it felt like to be at the lowest of the lowest. And so I ended up teaching. And I got a picture over there. I was teaching at A school with a red rope on, teaching students about communication, the very school the Navy said I didn't qualify for. I didn't go in with 1 degree. 5 degrees later, take SATs. I didn't take none of that stuff because I went the non-traditional route. Professor on the ship, want to take course here and there from all accredited schools, even the doctor of ministry that I did. None of those things the system said I should not have done. But I said when the system says no, God says yes. And sometimes we're in a situation as leaders, we think that, it's got to be this way. This has got to be the way to do it. And sometimes what we do when we hit that detour, in the road, it's like life. When a storm is raged, like behind me, these big ships back here, How to Persevere Storm Life, 10 Lessons to Persevere Life Stormy Seas. That was my 3rd book. That's because of the experience I've gone through. I believe our experience allow us to learn things from it if you take it away. They're practical lessons that all of my books, this was the bestseller right here, the devotional book, 21-day devotional nuggets for resilient living. My men's group, when I was stationed in Memphis, we did this for 21 days, and we had a prayer breakfast. And what it did allow us, very simple, I like to write in my book. I did a scripture, my favorite quote. I talked about it, and then I allowed them to write into the book. And people to this day love this. This was the bestseller also online. It's just a devotional book. I said, you know what? So I have a devotional book. I've been in 2 anthology books. My first book was a pastor, and his name was Pastor Dave. This was the project in my dining room. 5 strategies of resilient living, how to turn your pain into purpose. This was the first book I did. And I was like, wow, we were just at my table and one thing led to the next. And I said, you know what, let's do this. And then before you know it, book 8 is out, 10 books is out. I did books chaplains. And I said, wow, I'm kind of enjoying this right here because it all came from experience of life. And that's why the book on Resilient Leader, I said I had to do one on leadership. I did a leadership retreat this past May, a retreat for leaders in Orlando. So that's still evolving.
I'm gonna tell our audience that there's a 9th book. He told me what it's about. I'm gonna tell you later.
Yes. Be looking.
No, I'm so excited. That's amazing, and it's completely different than what you told me about your other book. So that's so cool.
Yes.
So tell our listeners, our viewers, those on YouTube, pray.com, and all the other platforms. Tell them how to find you. I know you're on IG. You're on Instagram. Tell them how to find you, your website, and how to to pick up maybe one of your great books. And that I didn't even know you did the devotional. That's super cool.
Oh yes.
Tell people how to find you.
Yes, they can find me on Facebook. Just put in Carl Barnes. Instagram at Dr. Dr. Carl Barnes. The same thing. They can email me. I have a email address, Dr. What's Dr. Barnes 701 at gmail.com. I was like, my mind just like blank there, like,
And
wow.
then your website, I was on your website.
Yes,
Great website.
www.drcarlbarnes.com. There you can get the free book, Just Pay Shipping and Handling for Leadership book. It's also an audio, and there's also a workbook. And Brother David, the workbook is a curriculum I found out for coaching and consulting, because it goes to this book, and I've had that. So anyone, leaders or pastors that want to have a curriculum already made up for you, the workbook is great. But Just Pay the Shipping and Handling, and on drcarlbarnes.com, that email, that's the website. That'll take it direct to this book and other things that are out there. All the other books are on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Just put in Dr. Carl Barnes, and all the books will come up. And I was glad to do a book signing with Barnes & Noble in Memphis, and I'm been about doing here in my hometown. But Barnes & Noble, Amazon, just put my name in, all the books will pop up. So
well, for those of you that are driving that are probably upset at me that I'm having you say this, I'll put it in the show notes. I'll have our team put all those links in the show notes. They'll be right there for you. And I want to ask, for those that are listening, be sure you share this. If you've got a friend or family member that's struggling in the area of maybe resilience, or they need some encouragement, share the podcast with them as well. And then certainly avail yourself to all the different content and things that Dr. Carl Barnes has. And again, we want to thank you for coming on. I know I said at the beginning of the show, but I appreciate you. And I always, anytime I talk to somebody in public or online that served our country, I always say thank you for your service. I didn't serve. I had a lot of family that did on both sides, but I don't at all take that for granted that they did that, and I think it's amazing. And I'm sure you've got some crazy stories. I'd love to hear you live. I'd love to hear about some of those.
I'm always
adventures.
Available. I love to do that. Like I said, just share my story. I like this. When we Devin here, just coming from the heart, just talking. Experience is the best teacher, but as Michael said, practical application as well. So I love to tell my story, and it seems like I'm telling the same story over and over again about overcoming insurmountable odds. That's resilience. To make the best of, I say, turning those lemons into real lemonade. And don't let no become your medicine. So those little phrases I talk about, because they're in my DNA, and it's all who I represent. It's all my life.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on the program today. And hey, those of you that are listening and watching on YouTube, be sure you hit the bell, you subscribe, share, and take a minute to go on your social media and post this as well, and help us to spread the word about the GEB America podcast. We are now in season number 3, and we are so excited about some of the programs that are on the way this fall and winter. Until next time, I'm Dave Grove saying thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next Tuesday release.